Welcome to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, the show where brilliant professionals share how to sharpen the universal skills required to flourish at work. Enjoy more career fun, wins, meaning, and money with your host, Pete Makaitis.
Hello, and thanks so much for joining us here for episode 182 with Sharon Steed. Sharon's talking empathy. So you're going to learn 1, why people aren't listening anymore. 2, pro tips for being empathetic even with people you don't like. And 3 ways to tackle difficult conversations. So if you'd like to check out the show notes or the transcript or the links to items that we reference here, you can find that over at awesomeatyourjob.com/ep182. And while you're at awesomeatyourjob.com, I encourage you to check out some of our handy resources. One I'd point you to now is the 10 Days to Winning at Work free email course. This is a compilation of some of the most actionable and brief excerpts from my enhanced thinking and collaboration training programs that have been proven to slash about 86 minutes on average of waste out of each professional's work week. So I took those best tidbits, put them in bite-sized emails for you to get one a day over 10 days so you can have more time, get home earlier, or do some more cool work that you never seem to get a chance to do with the 10 Days to Winning at Work email course. Now, here's Sharon's story. Sharon is an international keynote speaker and consultant focusing on improving communication through empathy. A lifelong stutterer, Sharon uses her speech impediment to teach what empathy is and how to use it as a foundation for positive and effective communication. She's spoken about this at conferences both nationally and internationally, at companies, and various events spanning multiple industries. Here's Sharon. Sharon, thanks so much for joining us here on the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast.
Hi, Pete. How's it going?
Oh, it's going great, and I'm glad to have you here.
I am super excited to be here.
Okay. Well, so I read about your background and such, and you have a kind of an interesting backstory where you mentioned that stuttering played a real part in your life and gave rise to much of your great work and content on empathy. Can you tell us that story?
Of course, yeah. So I have stuttered ever since I was around 3 years old. And people who stutter, like we kind of do these things that are trying to like avoid stuttering, right? And so a thing that I did was that I just stopped talking to people. I was around 24, 25-ish. And so basically, I would just avoid situations where I would have to say my name or talk about like my job. And eventually I came to a point where, you know, like I was depressed, right? Like I wasn't communicating in the way that I wanted to communicate. And so I decided to face this fear. And so the way that I did that was by pursuing public speaking. And so, the first speech I gave, it was actually in Chicago.
Yeah.
I gave an Ignite talk I want to say it was at 1871.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so those talks are 5 minutes and 20 slides. And the slides, they change every like 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And so I figured like, hey, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to, you know, like hardcore do it. Right. Yeah. So the talk went well. And there was actually a person there who ran a tech conference. And he invited me to speak at it. And so that's kind of how the whole thing began, was that one day.
Oh, that's so awesome. So you summoned some boldness, some determination, and you went big. Yeah. And that's so cool.
And a whole lot of fear.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you. And here we are talking on a podcast. So right on.
Thank you.
Well, I bumped into you from your Linda course about communicating with empathy.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I thought that was just such an important topic. And so maybe you could kick us off with a bit of the why. Why is it important to communicate with empathy at work?
Well, okay. So the paradigm of pretty much all of my talks is that the cornerstone of communication, the cornerstone of connection, that creates empathy, right? And so if we don't have that empathy, then we aren't truly connecting with the people that we're trying to communicate with.
All right. So that's kind of foundational, just to have some connection in the communication. So then what are maybe some of the top principles to pulling that off, to being empathetic and forming those connections?
Well, okay. So the first thing I say to people is that we're very bad listeners, especially in 2017, where there are tons of things going on, right? Like we get news on our phones. We are constantly connected to people. However, we aren't connecting with people because we aren't really consuming things that people are communicating to us, because there's so many other things that we want to kind of, connect with and learn about. So when we are talking to people, we aren't really paying attention to them in the ways that we should be, right? Like we hear kind of like their big message. So we don't like hear the tinier nuances of the conversation, that we're having.
All right. Well, so I hear you there. And so could you maybe lay out a little bit of the how then? How can we sort of marshal our attention and pick up better on those nuances with some better listening?
Well, so the first thing I say to do is to really look at people as you're talking to them and as they're talking to you. Like we have a tendency to kind of, look at our phones and see what's going on, like outside, or like what the other person is doing and saying, like on the other side of the room. And so we aren't really giving our partner in conversation like that attention, right? So the first thing that you do is really just pay attention to them, look at them as they're talking. And then when they've completed finishing their point, take a moment, compose yourself, and then, kind of summarize what they said to you. Like, I feel like we process information so quickly because we are accustomed to receiving information so quickly. The problem is that when we're talking to people, we're really just kind of rushing through the conversation. And so we're processing what they're saying without really paying attention to it. And so if you summarize what they said to them, then you guys are both on the same page. So the first two things are to pay attention. And then when you do speak, start with what they said first, and then talk about what you think.
Oh, I like that when you summarize what they said. And, this reminds me of once I was chatting with a master salesperson. It was actually a joy to interact with him. We're naming names. He's Corey McQuaid of the Northwestern Mutual Financial Group, so insurance
fancy
stuff, right? So in some ways you think, no one really wants to talk about insurance. But sure enough, I remember we had one meeting where he just kind of listened to me and my needs and what was going on. And then we had a subsequent meeting in which he, maybe for like 5 or 10 minutes or more, he says, Pete, what I heard you say was, all these things, that I said. And what was fascinating for me was I know I told him those things. And yet when he summarized and shared them back to me on a different day, it had such an effect on me internally. I was like, this man knows my very soul. Like he had some sort of supernatural gift or something. It was like, no, Pete, you told him all those things. And yet, I guess it just speaks to how rare that is, that we really feel heard fully.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And then there's also a psychological component there, in that, like, we as people, like, we love when people say things that we have said in a complimentary light. And we also really love the sound of our name. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure that when he was saying the things that he said to you, he was also like saying your name a couple of times every, like maybe 2 or 3 minutes.
Absolutely.
Like, we just love that about, I mean, like, we just want to be reaffirmed. And that's the easiest way to do it, is to have people that you respect, like, say, hey, I really love this thing that you said, Pete. I want to talk about it more, Pete. It's really easy to do.
Yes, Sharon. It is easy to do. And I don't know, maybe part of us, sometimes I feel a little bit of a hesitation, I think, when it comes to saying people's names. I don't even know what that's from. It's a little bit like, maybe it's like too much or too personal, or I'm worried I didn't actually remember their name properly to begin with if I just met them.
Yeah.
It sounds fair. Like you're saying, just go for it. People love it. It's all good.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Very good. Very good. And so I also like it. I'm thinking about when people even use words and phrases that I used is like, so you're out just really looking for ways to cut down the bull crap. It's like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm looking for. It's so, or if it's like an odd turn of a phrase, because I guess I'm known for some of those, I feel affirmed.
Nice.
When they go there with me, it's like they're sharing my world. We're in the same arena.
Right.
And that's cool. So, well, now tell me, how can we do some more of that good listening, summarizing, looking at people, being empathetic, when you're just not feeling it, you're tired, you're stressed, maybe you genuinely don't care, even though you wish you cared and you wish you were less self-absorbed, or you just don't even really enjoy your interactions with that person and you kind of wish it would pass more quickly. So we're talking about the darker side, I guess, of our human natures, but
oh, of course.
What are your pro tips for, when you find yourself in the yuck or of that spot to bringing forth the empathy?
Okay, so here's the thing about empathy, right? Like, it's very easy to be extremely empathetic towards those that you have a like positive relationship with.
Yeah.
It's extremely difficult to have that empathy when you don't care about this person, when you feel like this person like isn't on your team. The thing about it, though, is that you are being a greater empath with the person that you don't like when you are being empathetic towards them. So you really just have to kind of do the work. You have to put yourself in the place of like, okay, like I have to get this thing done. And even though I don't care for you as a person, like you are still a person and you have the same sort of feelings and emotions that I do. And you know, like you are here to get the same thing done that I'm trying to get done. And so you basically just have to put your feelings aside and you have to view this situation like 1000% from the other person's point of view. And it's not a lot of fun, especially when you're just like, God, I can't stand this person. I don't want to work with Mike anymore. Mike is rude. He's condescending. I don't want to deal with him. However, if you approach this situation from a negative place, then you aren't going to get anything done and you're only going to hurt yourself. So basically, you just have to do the work. And I know that nobody wants to hear that, but that's just life. You just got to do the work.
Okay.
Even now.
Taken. A person is a person. Well, this reminds me of, oh man, this old school program or CD we had for kids. And it was called Don't Dress Your Cat in an Apron. And, and it ends by saying, a person's a person that way. And so right on, you know, good message for children, good message for grownups, dead on. Thank you. So, well, now I'm wondering when it comes to, you know, engaging that conversation, do you have any favorite words, phrases, scripts that go a long way, either in terms of your acknowledging feelings or your summarizing? What are some of your go-to favorite phrases?
So anything that conveys that you are either trying to understand their point or to truly understand their feelings, like those things are going to get you pretty far. Like just conveying that you really paid attention and that you are trying to, you know, truly understand. Like those two things are going to be the phrasing that's going to help you most. And so you just want to use the words that they used.
All right.
Yeah. So the answer is that that's just going to change from situation to situation. Like you have to kind of assess like who this person is and what they can and can't kind of comprehend, and then go from there, if that makes sense.
I hear you. So the best words are their words.
Right.
That's easy and solid.
Their words.
Cool. And so then I'd love to get your take when it comes to this empathy piece, when it comes to difficult conversations. It's like you're going to share some bad news or some stuff that is hard to say. What are your pro tips on going there with the empathy perspective?
So the first thing that I like to say to people is to always keep in mind your message that you want to convey overall. So if the person that you're talking to is like falling behind and they've made some mistakes on some projects at work, then the broader issue here is that you want this person to improve and you want to be of assistance in that improvement. And so when you're talking to them, you know, the goal isn't to like break them down and say, hey, you aren't doing A, B, C, and X, Y, and Z. It's, I see that you're having problems. How can we help you? Right?
Gotcha.
So that's the first thing, is to think about the broader message. The second thing is to just not have a script. It comes off as very impersonal and practiced. and to, this person who was kind of receiving this bad news, like that can be very cold and distancing. And so they're going to feel like, one, inferior, and two, like really inadequate. So just have like a couple of points that you want to kind of talk through. And yeah. So that's number 2. And then the third thing that I like to say is to not, this is kind of like a positioning thing, like a body language thing, is to not like have a physical barrier between like you and the person, right? So don't sit behind a desk. Like, don't have them stand up and you sit down. You should communicate to each other on the same plane, because that shows that you are on their team. So those are the 3, like big things that you can do when you are, approaching difficult conversations.
Oh, thank you. And how about some perspectives when it comes to just offering encouragement that makes an impact, that genuinely builds up? Any thoughts on doing that well?
Well, I mean, that's going to vary from person to person. Like some people, they only need like a, hey, good job. And that's going to be it. There's other people out there that are going to need a little bit more attention, some more acknowledgement in order to feel like you are, just paying attention to the work that they're doing. So that is going to vary depending on who, the person is and what they need from you, like as their boss or as their coworker or as their partner.
Thank you. Well, tell me anything else you want to make sure that we mention before we hear about some of your favorite things.
I guess the only thing that I can think of is to just check out my course on linda.com.
Yeah. Well, so now can you share with us a favorite quote, something you find inspiring?
The one that I'm kind of very into now is live and let live. I feel like we as a society, like we are fairly judgmental people. And so like we see people doing things, and from our perspective, it's like, oh gosh, like I would never do that. Mm-hmm. Right. And I feel like the way to, like being a better empath is to, be more accepting of what, your friends are doing, your family is doing. And so you have to just kind of feel like, okay, cool. Like this is your choice. So live and let live.
All right. Thank you. And how about a favorite book?
Anything by Brené Brown.
Yeah.
She's So the one I'm pretty invested in now is called Daring Greatly, and she talks a lot about vulnerability as an asset to, like evolution and change and improvement. And so, yeah.
Oh, thank you.
She's great.
Absolutely. And how about, is there a particular nugget or piece that you've shared in your keynotes or your work with folks that seems to really resonate, getting them, nodding their heads and taking notes and connecting with them?
Oh, that's a good question. A lot of people really leave inspired. I feel like the talks I give are like 50% like business based, and then 50% like inspiring. People have commented on, like personal challenges, right? Like we see our personal challenges as carriers to success. And so people have come up to me and said, hey, like the fact that you have taken this personal challenge and turned it into, an asset is very inspiring. And so that's the thing I probably get the most. And it's actually really weird because that's a really like hard compliment to take for me. It's like, no, you guys don't understand. Like, this is miserable for me when I'm up here and I can't say something. Like, it's really hard. And I'm like, well, it is what it is. And I'm glad that people can find value in kind of both, the business aspect of the talk and the, like personal aspect of it. So it's not about me.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, and do you have a final challenge or call to action you'd issue to folks seeking to be awesome at their jobs?
The main thing I think, and like the theme of everything, is to just really give people a chance. Like, we don't know like what is going on in this person's life that is giving them, this bad perspective, or them being difficult. Like, the perspective that, we have is our own, and it's an opinion. And so if we give people a chance, if we really like try to be better empaths, then we can maybe, find out things about people that we wouldn't, talk to normally, or we could connect with people in a more authentic way. So just give people a chance.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, Sharon, this has been so fun. Thank you for taking the time and sharing the good stuff. I wish you lots of luck with your keynotes and your work and all you're up to.
Thank you so much, Pete. This has been a lot of fun.
I really dug what Sharon said about saying people's names and doing it frequently because folks tend to dig it. They love it. I guess you can overdo it, but I think just about all of us are underdoing it in my experience of hearing my name said, as well as my experience of saying other names. This makes me think of my favorite TV show ever. It's Breaking Bad. Say my name. You're Heisenberg. That's right. That little exchange, which is pretty intense, but a good reminder to say my name. People dig it. They want to hear that. So again, if you want to check out the show notes, the transcript, the links to items that we reference here, it's over at awesomeatyourjob.com/ep182. And I hope if you haven't already, you'll push subscribe so you can hear from folks like our very next guest. It is Dr. Paul White. He's talking about appreciation at work, how and why it's important, and how to do it well. Hope to catch you then, and peace.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode. To get the most out of this conversation, visit awesomeatyourjob.com to find today's show notes, transcript, and infographic summary cheat sheet. For more entertaining professional skill sharpening, be sure to subscribe to catch the next episode of How to Be Awesome at Your Job.